Why did Putin announce the occupation of Huliaipole and Myrnohrad? And how did the Ukrainian armed forces respond to this? What does Trump have to do with it? And what is the real situation in these cities right now? How did the Ukrainian armed forces wipe out 3 Russian battalions after losing their command post in Huliaipole? And with what shocking prediction for 2026 did Kirilo Budanov burst in? That's what today's episode is about, friends. But first, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and leave your comments. It's very important for the growth of our community. Well, and so as not to waste time, let's get started right away. And it all began back on Saturday, December 27th, during the visit of the war criminal Vladimir Putin to his troops' command post. The chief of the Russian General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, reported to him about the successful capture of cities, Myrnohrad and Huliaipole. And this is not just another routine report, friends. Putin commented on this as a significant step toward the complete liberation of the so-called DNR. But they didn't stop there, because Gerasimov in response voiced some plans, saying that there must be control over the entire Donbass, as well as the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions. And then the most important message from Putin was delivered. He stated that if the Kiev authorities do not wish to resolve the matter peacefully, we will solve all issues by military means. But in reality, we've been hearing this for a long time already, agree with me, friends. So now let's try to understand why such statements are being made right now. The first key to the answer is the reaction of our General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The point is that the response was swift, it was clear, and the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine called the statements from the Kremlin lies and disinformation. Simply without emotion, they reported the following. First, Huliaipole. The situation is difficult. Fighting is ongoing. Our troops continue the defensive operation in the city, destroying enemy infantry groups. The city is not under the control of the Russian Federation. Second, Myrnohrad. The situation is difficult, but the enemy has not been able to carry out its plans to capture the entire Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad agglomeration. That is why they resort to disinformation. Dobrikny. In other words, by telling us all stories about having captured Huliaipole and Myrnohrad. Third, the General Staff provides vivid examples from the past. Kupiansk, Pokrovsk. The Russians have also repeatedly, as is well known, claimed these as captured, surrounded, or something else. But our troops are holding out there, as is well known, liberating neighborhoods and inflicting losses on the enemy. Pokrovsk, for example, has been defending itself for 17 months already. 17. And Kupiansk, just for the record, has been almost completely liberated. The General Staff explains the main point. Look, such lies first and foremost are targeted at a foreign audience. In other words, their goal is to create an illusion of success in order to put pressure on Ukraine's partners during negotiations. But this will not affect our position. And the only real result of all these statements is more than 1,000 Russian soldiers killed and wounded every day, dying on the battlefield while trying to fulfill this propagandistic dream of theirs. So why is this being done right now, friends? The thing is, as I already mentioned, the date of Putin's statements is December 27th. Is this a coincidence or not? Absolutely not, because this was the day before a planned important meeting between President Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump in Florida, which will take place today, December 28th. At this meeting, they are supposed to discuss the peace plan, security guarantees, and, which is critically important, territorial issues, particularly in Donbass and Zaporizhzhia region, the issue of the nuclear power plant. That's the whole logic. The Kremlin issues a loud statement about major victories, specifically in these regions. This is a classic negotiation trick. You need to create the appearance of strength, of success on the battlefield in order to take a more advantageous position at the negotiating table. As if to say, look, we've almost captured everything already, so negotiations should be on our terms. This is an attempt to wage an information war in parallel with the real war. But what do, for example, independent data show about actual advances? Let's now look at the data from the most authoritative military public project, Deep State, which monitors the front line. As of December 28th, there is confirmation of local advances by Russian troops directly in Huliaipole and in Zaporizhzhia region, in the areas of Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk, which are in Donetsk region. There are also advances near Zelensky, which is also in Zaporizhzhia region, and in several areas of Donetsk region. What is important to understand here? That Deep State records actual advances. Often this happens on certain streets or in industrial zones. This does not mean the capture of a city, taking control of a city, occupation, and so on. It means fierce positional fighting, and this precisely confirms the statements of our General Staff. The situation is indeed difficult, but the cities have not been surrendered. The cities are not occupied by Russia. So what is really happening there? That's the question we have. Let's dive into the details now, friends, because everything here is very telling. According to our military, first of all, the units of the 425th, the Scylla regiment is currently eliminating infiltrated Russians in the city. Second, the occupiers managed to get in by taking advantage of the fog and bad weather. Now our soldiers are locating them, isolating them in buildings, and destroying them with drones and artillery. Third, according to intercepted communications, the enemy has already lost 2 battalions completely, and the third is close to being destroyed. The fighting is fierce, with about 20 clashes every day just in the city. So that's 3 Russian battalions completely wiped out. That's what needs to be said. And here's what, friends, the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin, says the Russians are pulling reserves from other directions, for example, from Verbov, and throwing them into Huliaipole. Why? Because it's a logistics hub. They can't move further towards Zaporizhia or, for example, towards Dnipropetrovsk region, leaving Huliaipole uncontrolled in their rear. In other words, this is not a victory. It's a forced, bloody operation with huge losses in order to carry out their further plans. Yes, the Russians captured one of our command posts. I told you about this in the previous episode. Be sure to watch it. This has been confirmed. I mean, the media reported this, citing our military. It was written about. So this is a confirmed story, but now the situation is being corrected in the city. The arena of battles is not a Russian trophy or anything like that. So what exactly is happening in Donetsk region? Pokrovsk and our forces, especially the paratroopers, they control the northern part of the city, north of the railway. Dozens of enemy attacks have been repelled there. The Russians are pressing on the west of Pokrovsk, trying to reach the Grishyn area, but without success. Myrnohrad, the situation is difficult. The defense forces, paratroopers, and marines are holding their positions. We are working on strengthening the group. Control over the corridor near Svitla Riven allows us to do this. And what is the enemy doing? They do not have real control because they truly do not have real control. They stage demonstrative propaganda actions on the southern outskirts. They film videos like in the style of, "We're in the city for internal consumption in Russia." This happens often, then they are rather quickly burned out in their positions. Ours take over, and that's it. They get some kind of reward for that, for, what do they call it? Flag planting. I think that's what they call it, right? Sometimes they manage to get into the center. Undoubtedly, the situation is difficult, I repeat once again, but our troops are working on blocking them. So here, in fact, we see the same picture. Fierce fighting, tough defense, minimal enemy advances at the cost of huge losses, and loud propaganda statements about capturing territory. So, friends, the Kremlin's statements are lies meant for negotiations. The reality at the front is heavy defensive battles. So what are the real plans of the Russian Federation for 2026, for the coming year? Kirill Budanov, the head of the main intelligence directorate, speaks about them clearly. He says that Russia has not achieved the desired pace, but its goals have not changed. First, full control over Donetsk region. Second, maximum advance in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Third, continuing operations in the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson directions. The objectives for 2026 are Donbas and Zaporizhzhia region, says Budanov, and capturing all of Zaporizhzhia is their ultimate dream. Here's the main point. Huliaipole and Myrnohrad are not ends in themselves. They're part of a bigger plan. It's about taking control of Donbas and breaking through to Zaporizhzhia. That's why, to me, any talk about negotiations, a peace process, peace, a ceasefire, and so on seems pretty ridiculous right now. So, friends, let's quickly sum up what we have at this moment. First, the statements by Putin and Gerasimov about capturing Myrnohrad and Huliaipole. This is large-scale disinformation. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, deep state, and eyewitness accounts from the scene. All of this is refuted by our military. The cities have not been captured. Fierce defensive battles are ongoing there. Second, the purpose of this lie is political, purely political, because it is timed to coincide with the meeting between Zelensky and Trump, and is primarily aimed at creating the illusion of the Russian Federation's strength to exert pressure during upcoming peace negotiations. Third, this is the real situation at the front, which is indeed difficult but under control. Pardon me for saying so. Our troops are holding the defense, inflicting losses on the enemy. Entire battalions have been destroyed, particularly near Huliaipole, and we are blocking the enemy's advance. Fourth is Budanov, which I haven't mentioned yet, the Kremlin's real plans for 2026. This involves the capture of the entire Donetsk region and an advance in Zaporizhzhia. The battles for Huliaipole and Myrnohrad are part of this plan. And this shows that Moscow is not ready for any kind of peace, no matter how much they claim it, foaming at the mouth. So the main conclusion is this. You shouldn't believe the loud statements coming from the Kremlin. You should trust our defenders, the general staff of the armed forces, and reliable sources of information. The war continues, friends, not only on the battlefield, as you well know, but also in the information space. So just keep that in mind. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Take care of yourselves. Glory.